Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today, I've got a mess of a game on the table in front of me, and we have successfully started our campaign and content on Kingdom Death. And the good news is, Shira, my partner, full-time Quackalope member, enjoyed the game a lot. And so we'll actually be bringing you more consistent and continued coverage of my favorite game of all time. This video, though, that you clicked on is going to be six rules that you probably get wrong in Kingdom Death, or at least your game group has to continue checking and rechecking. And I swung over to the Kingdom Death Facebook group, find people over there, and asked the audience to give me their lists. And so this isn't entirely compiled by me, although I am going to try to dispel and address all of the points they provided. The points, starting from top to bottom, is going to be How Survival Works by Tyler Garcett. It's going to deal with not being able to dodge while you're dealing with attacks or engaged as the attacker by Daniel Gore. The Rule of Death by myself, along with standing rules by myself, things that I've missed. We're going to talk about Critical Roles for Wounds by Ben Shagunwa. And we're going to talk about Fighting Arts and Disorders by Peter Hansen. So thank you so much for adding your commentary and letting us know what you and your group miss. Let's start with my two. First off is going to be the Rule of Death, probably one of the most misunderstood elements of Kingdom Death, and one of the things that gets the internet all in a tizzy. You see, the Rule of Death isn't that you always rule against yourself. The Rule of Death isn't that the game is always trying to devour you, even though this game certainly is. The Rule of Death is plain and simple a way to move the game forward. When you're in a debate, a debacle, and you don't quite know the correct resolution, the Rule of Death tells you to vote against yourself. Do what is worse for the survivors, and then check the rules after you've played the game. Don't slow it down, bog it in with rules checks and arguments between friends. Instead, the designer just wants you to play. And if push comes to shove, decide against yourselves, because you are the weakest creatures in this existence. That's the Rule of Death. Plain and simple, it's a just keep going, have fun, focus on the game mechanic. Let's talk about my second one, standing. Standing is going to be a bit confusing because if you get knocked down, you have to determine when you're going to stand up. Well, it's kind of simple. You need to allow space for the monster to act when you get knocked down. So if you get knocked down on your own turn, all hits, resolved, actions, everything's canceled, and you're knocked down until the monster acts. Once the monster finishes its activation, you stand back up. The point where I get confused sometimes is going to be being knocked down by the monster. If the monster runs over you and knocks you down, you will stand up, not at the end of that monster's activation, but at the end of the next activation. So there's an entire round where you're on the ground. You have to face the consequences for getting balled over. I find it a little bit confusing because I always think it's the end of the monster's turn, but if the monster is currently going, then you actually have to resolve the next full monster's turn to engage with it appropriately. Let's swing into the most requested one, the thing that people find the most confusing, and pardon me, I am going to reference the rulebook a little bit on this to give us a fair chance at getting most things right. Let's talk about survival actions and activations. Survival is going to be such an essential part of Kingdom Death. It is how you engage, move around the map, and your main dice mitigation and strategic element. It allows you to get out of the way, to re-engage with attack, to try something over that didn't work too well, or stand your ally up. But it's confusing. There are a lot of moments when you can and cannot utilize your survival actions. So, survival actions. Survival actions are going to be dodge, encourage, dash, surge, and endure. Survival opportunities are going to trigger between actions on survivors' turns, and that's on your turn and other survivors' turns, during flows on monster AI cards, and that's specifically, if I have an AI card, going to be the grayed out little arrowed lines between things like targeting and attacking. It's going to trigger at specific points during survivors' attacks. There's going to be moments where you could spend survival action to utilize a special ability or claim a specific resource. And then when a monster is knocked down, you're going to be able to use it a little bit more freeform. Let's go a little bit more in depth here where the limitations are. A survivor may perform each survival action only once per round. You can't do multiple dodges, and attacking survivors cannot perform survival actions, which is actually going to be a standalone point here in just a moment. Let's dig into dodge. Dodge is going to allow you to spend one survival to get out of the way. But here's the key. After hit locations are rolled, but before any severe injuries are rolled, the survivor can dodge a hit of their choice. The dodged hit becomes a failed attack roll and does not cause damage. Any additional undodged hits will resolve normally. Dodge is the only survival action that can be performed by knocked down survivors. So, only one that can be performed if you're knocked down currently. You can still roll out of the way. It happens before severe injuries are rolled, but after hit locations, so you can be more specific on how you want to block damage, like I'm protecting my head and not my chest, and you have to factor in the fact that it becomes a failed hit, meaning after damage and other effects do not count at all. Encourage. A standing survivor, keyword there, may encourage and call out to another survivor, allowing them to stand if they're knocked down. A survivor may encourage at any time, but death survivors cannot be encouraged. So if you're calling out to your friend on your survival turn or their survival turn or any activation, you can get them stood back up so they can complete or take other survival actions themselves or potentially run out of the way from a rampaging white lion. Surge. When opportunity permits, a survivor may spend one survival to surge. A survivor who surges gains +1 action. You must use it immediately. This is really essential here. You can't get it and bank it and use it and kind of chain it down the line. You have to immediately take that action. You can use it to interact with gear, terrain, anything else. Resolve the results of surge, including monster reactions and outcomes, before resuming the normal turn. So whatever happens, you're kind of freezing into this zone, taking that surge action, that activation, resolving any consequences of it as if you were the active player, and then going back to whoever was in charge. Endure. You may spend 7 survival, minus your luck, to ignore a severe injury before you roll a result. Your luck is determined by the sum of your permanent luck attribute, any luck modifier tokens, and any other gear or abilities affecting your luck at the time you endure. Endure is going to be one of those late game strategy sessions that allows you to buffer yourself against severe injuries with some of your most experienced units. You want to remember this one. You want to potentially have some survival banked so that you can survive some of these later games. Survival opportunities. There are moments during frantic chaos of combat that survivors may exploit their advantage. These moments are survival opportunities, and there are the only times that a survivor may dash or surge between actions on a survivor's turn, during flows on a monster AI card, at specific points during survivors' attacks, and when a monster is knocked down. During survivor's turn. During the survivor's turn, there's an opportunity for survival actions before or after any completed survivor movement or action. That is both your personal activation and your friend's activation. So your friend could move and start their attack, finish their attack, and then you could engage with an attack as well. Let's say you're in a more advantageous spot because the monster reacted, moved closer to you, and you're swinging with your action. During monster flows, every card is going to have a series of monster flows. For instance, this card right here will allow the creature, the white lion, to identify you as a target, and then with a flow, you could dash out of the way, making it so that you don't get caught. This is really key and allows you a little bit of flexibility on the game map. Next, during survival actions. An attacking survivor cannot perform survival actions. However, during a fellow survival attack, there are 2 specific opportunities for other survivors to interrupt and perform survivor actions. So if you're the attacking survivor, you cannot engage, period. You cannot spend survival to dodge, to dash, to get out of the way. You've made yourself vulnerable, but your friends can. After the attacker rolls to wound, but before a monster resolves its reaction, if a hit location does not have a reaction, there's no opportunity to act. So if there's a reaction by the monster, another person could step in and try their best to interrupt that by taking an extra attack or dashing out of the way to avoid damage heading their way, like a creature running forward, potentially grabbing and doing more damage to them. Second, when the attacker causes a critical wound, after any critical wound effects are applied but before the card is discarded. You have an opportunity to do extra actions after a critical wound hit or during a critical wound hit and its resolution. Once the survival action is fully resolved, including monster reactions, effects, and or movement, the interrupted attack resumes. And then finally, when a monster is knocked down, the only time a survival action may be performed on a monster's turn outside of flow is when the monster is knocked down. When a monster is knocked down on its turn, there's an opportunity for all survivors to perform a survival action. This is really important. It allows you to take advantage of the monster being knocked down because it will stand up at the end of its activation or the end of its turn. So you'll get a chance to deal some extra damage, surge, dash, get in close, use all your survival to get as many hits as possible. And that's the breakdown. I know, a little bit of reading, but it's good to review these elements. Let's focus in on another one by Daniel Gore. Don't dodge while you're attacking. This is one that I think people miss all the time. If you are the attacker, whatever reaction is coming your way or trap card is coming your way, you cannot avoid, period. You are putting yourself in a vulnerable position by being the person that is lunging forward, and so you're not able to mitigate that at all, period. Moving on down, critical roles for wounds. This was a fairly highly voted one. It seems like people are missing critical roles for wounds. If you are attacking, you first have the stage of the hit. A critical roll with a hit is not a critical roll for a wound. I believe that is what the person is talking about. So if you're rolling the die, that first thing that lands on a crit, everyone cheers, and then you realize you still need to roll effectively to wound. Don't go ahead and discard an AI. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. You need to still resolve your wound die. Just because you have a perfect hit doesn't mean you have a perfect wound. And then moving down, fighting arts and disorders. This one specifically is referencing the fact or the idea that disorders and fighting arts are both limited to 3 each. That means the fourth one has to replace one of the above. You cannot just continue stacking them. This is both good and bad. Bad because you might have to get rid of things that you enjoy or make hard decisions. Good because with disorders, if you just get enough of them, you can start cycling them out and really perfect a survivor or get rid of a trait that's preventing you from being more effective on the field. And there are ways to just generate disorders in this game, so you might want to prioritize those with some of your survivors that have been put on their back foot due to some really, really problematic disorders. That being said, that's 5 things, 6-ish things that are commonly missed in Kingdom Death. Hopefully, this was an interesting video. We just got done playing. It is 6 a.m. right now. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please tip your hat, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment letting me know what are the things you miss. Maybe there needs to be a follow-up or a top 10 or a specific on characters, like 5 things you might not know about the White Lion, stuff and such like that. Whatever the case, I'm going to pack all this up. I have a few more videos to film tonight, a few things to edit and process, and at some point, I'm going to go to sleep. Although restless and full of nightmares because I did just get done playing this game. Thank you. We'll see you later.